Hi, this is Jamie Franklin, curator here at the Bennington Museum. Welcome to another tour at 10. We're so pleased to have opened up to the public, and particularly I am so pleased to have opened up this exhibition, Robert Frost at Present in Vermont. And this exhibition explores the time that Robert Frost lived and worked here in Bennington County between 1920 and 1938. And it particularly explores his relationships to other artists and writers living and working here in Bennington County during that period. And in one of our previous tours at 10, I spoke about a sculpture by the artist Harriet Gowan Bingham, or Harriet Bingham Miller, as she came to be known later. This is actually an article. One of our viewers was intrigued by the mystery of the title of this sculpture, Democracy. And so they did some digging and actually found this article which shows Harriet Bingham Miller with this sculpture. It's International Studio magazine. It was actually published in 1924. Our casting of Democracy is dated 1927, but we now know that it was realized by 1924. We know a little bit more about what she means by the title Democracy. And it relates to the poetry of Walt Whitman. She says here, I did my democracy as I saw it in the style of the Far East. As I mentioned before, that sculpture may have been based on kind of Egyptian sculpture, which I think during this period the Far East included Egypt, the Middle East, so we get that sense. But this is a work which I referenced in that tour at 10, and this is a drawing and musical composition, which is a collaboration between the artist Rockwell Kent, who did the drawing up here at the top, as well as the inscription, above a musical composition by Carl Ruggles. And it's dedicated, as you can see up here, to Harriet Bingham. And so Kent and Ruggles were good friends. Kent lived here in Arlington from 1919 to 1925. And they collaborated this. This was a presentation copy of Ruggles' composition, Portals, which they gave to Harriet Bingham. And Bingham was a sculptor, an artist. She was also a philanthropist. And she actually gave Ruggles a monthly stipend to help him make a living. He was a very slow and methodical composer. There are only a couple dozen finished musical compositions by Ruggles known throughout his very long and career. And so he depended on the assistance of philanthropists like Harriet Bingham to make a living. And so they, in kind of thanks for her support, Kent and Ruggles created this collaborative drawing that they gave to her. And Portals, the composition, as well as the drawing on it, are inspired by a Walt Whitman poem. It's a short little two-line poem called Portals. And there's a little epigram up here at the top, which is the first line of that poem. And it says, "What are those of the known but to ascend and enter the unknown?" And so Kent certainly knew Robert Frost. In fact, we have a letter right here in this case below the drawing, which is a letter of condolence from Rockwell Kent after he had moved away up to upstate New York in the Adirondacks to Robert Frost in 1940 upon the death of Frost's son, Carol Frost. And so we also know that they knew each other through J.J. Lanks. In fact, if you just take a quick look right up here, here's one of a number of J.J. Lanks wood engravings, which are in the Frost exhibition. Lanks illustrated a number of Frost's works during this period. And Lanks and Kent were two artists who were real proponents of a kind of revitalization of wood engraving as an artistic medium during this period. And so all of these artists were thinking about similar things. And so it was no surprise, but a great joy to be able to discover this connection between Harriet Bingham Miller and her sculpture Democracy and Walt Whitman. And it helps us kind of have a better understanding of the sort of relationships and ideas that these artists were thinking about alongside Robert Frost here in Bennington during this period. And so this whole section is a kind of about mortality. Frost is often thought of as kind of a folksy New England poet whose poems are often interpreted to have more positive messages, but he also wrote a lot of poetry that was kind of about, as it goes, the line goes, and stopping by woods on a snowy evening, deep and dark things. And so Kent and Ruggles were also thinking about issues of mortality. This is a Rockwell Kent painting from his time in Vermont called Puritan Church. I've paired it with Robert Frost's poem In a Disused Graveyard. And then in the case here, right below the Kent drawing and Ruggles' composition, is an original typescript of Robert Frost's poem, The Middletown Murder, which is one of Frost's kind of darkest poems. And it's actually about a man, a woman who's cheating on her husband. The man comes home, catches them in the act, and actually murders his wife's lover in cold blood. This was never included in any of Frost's collected works, but he gave this typescript of this poem to his friend Rust Orton, who went on to become the founder of the Vermont Country Store. So again, this exhibition is filled with these connections among these different characters and help us understand the larger kind of cultural, literary, and artistic contexts in which Frost was working here in Bennington during this period. So really encourage you to come see the exhibit, come and see Harriet Bingham Miller's sculpture Democracy, which we now at least understand has to do with Walt Whitman's conception of democracy, which he wrote about extensively in his own poetry, and enjoy all of the other things that we have to offer now that we're open back to the public. Thanks, and see you soon.